And I want to talk about Joe Biden. So Joe Biden is the president of the United States at this time. So Joe Biden recently this week, he launched an airstrike. He ordered an airstrike on a target in Syria. So for me personally, I look back on military actions that I've supported in the past. I did support the war in Iraq at the time. You have to remember at the time too, I was in my early 20s. We were about a year and a half after 9/11. My blood was still boiling from that. And Saddam Hussein did look like an issue that just needed to be solved at that time. Unfortunately, we solved that problem and then created more problems. So I'll admit that did not turn out like I hope, and I was wrong on that as far as how to go. I think at the time, with the information we had, it was the right decision. Looking back on it now, it was definitely not the right decision. However, and Donald Trump, his first couple of months in office, he also launched an airstrike on Syria. I was confused about that, but I then remember him saying that, hey, there was a chemical weapons attack, so there was some sort of justification for it. There was a chemical weapons. Chemical weapons are not okay, so you launch an attack to kind of say, hey, that's not okay, just to make sure that the message is clear. So you are sending a message. Unfortunately, those messages cost lives, and you better have a solid justification for military action like that. So for me personally, if you give me a good enough justification, though, I'll go along with just about any military action, as long as the justification is good enough. For example, like I said, Trump said that there was some sort of chemical weapons attack that happened at that time. Okay, fine. If that's the case, and you want to either destroy the ability to launch those chemical weapons, or you want to destroy the chemical weapons facility where they're created, whatever the case may be, I get it. You want to do that, that's fine. I get it. Same thing when it came to me supporting the invasion of Iraq. At the time, we had even the countries that did not want us to invade Iraq, they said Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. So it wasn't like, basically everybody who guessed correctly that was not true, they were lucky. Okay, because 50-50, you either had him or he didn't. So congratulations, you won we won the coin toss. So if you give me, though, a good enough justification, I'll go along with a lot of things. Apparently, Joe Biden, though, is saying that there was the murder of a civilian contractor in Syria, and I'll take him at his word that that's the case. That this strike was mostly about retaliation. You cannot kill either American citizens or people working for the United States government. That's not okay, without some sort of retaliation. I get that. But my issue with the strike isn't necessarily that it happened. There are some Middle Eastern concerns that I'm afraid how this will work, because we know Joe Biden wants to make nice with Iran, even though it makes absolutely no sense after the Abraham Accords and all the other peace deals that Trump just signed in the last year. Israel is our greatest ally in the region. They have peace treaties now with Egypt, Jordan, I believe it's here. What's the other ones? United Arab Emirates. They have Sudan. They have what's the other? I think there's another one with Morocco, which is technically not in the Middle East, but it's a Muslim nation in North Africa. So that is a big deal. There was all of these peace deals that went out last year, and those peace deals were able to kind of isolate Iran, so that they were basically, the entire rest of the Middle East was saying, hey, if we have to decide between Israel and Iran, we're going to choose Israel. And that's basically what was going on. So I'm a little bit concerned that this strike is actually more of a problem messing with those things, messing with our the other peace agreements that were negotiated under the prior administration. So that concerns me. However, I think for the most part that won't mess things up too much. My other concern is you have to realize that whenever you're attacking Syria right now, there's a chance that you could be causing problems with Russia, because Russia is a major ally of Syria. They have the backing of Russia. Under no circumstances do we want a hot war with Russia or China. I mean, those are the two. If you had to choose two countries in the world we don't want to go boots on the ground war with, it's Russia and China. Now, not to say that we wouldn't win, but the last thing we want right now is a hot war with nuclear powers. We just don't want that. So if there's going to be any risk of war, you better damn sure make sure you have let the Russians know, hey, this is in retaliation for this. We're doing what we can to limit civilian casualties. We are trying to limit casualties altogether, but this is going to happen. So there are channels that you can go through to make sure this works out. So I'm a little bit concerned that it's escalating potential problems with Russia, which we don't want to deal with that. Also, I'm wondering where all the anti-war Democrats went. When I was in college, every Democrat was against war. Like, it was almost to the point where they would gladly surrender to any country that attacked us or any ideology that attacked us. So I'm wondering where all of those anti-war Democrats went, because they're nowhere to be found now. Striking Syria right now is exactly what we were complaining about the war in Iraq was. The war in Iraq was supposedly a war for oil. Well, right now, I'm not sure how much you can count this as a conspiracy theory, but right now there is a push to build a pipeline, an oil and natural gas pipeline, from Qatar, which is on the Persian Gulf, to Turkey. So the Qatar-Turkey pipeline. Well, the main plan of that goes through Saudi Arabia, and to get to Turkey, it goes straight through Syria. That's the plan that wants to be used. So if there's a war and the United States goes to war in Syria, that is legitimately a war for oil. Like, legitimately. No ifs, ands, or buts. If the United States goes to war in the Middle East and it's in Syria, I guarantee it's going to sound the same as when Bush invaded Iraq. I get it. It's going to sound exactly the same. Oh, we're trying to liberate. There's weapons of mass destruction. There's chemical weapons there. It's going to sound exactly the same. And we heard all of this almost 20 years ago. It's going to sound exactly the same. The only difference is that this time around, it is legitimately a war for oil. That is really the only reason, because the interests are there. The plan is to have this pipeline go in because, and here's the reason. The reason Russia doesn't want this to happen, they're siding with Syria. They don't want this pipeline to happen because right now, Europe is kind of dependent on Russian oil and natural gas for energy. So the energy that's not being taken care of from nuclear, wind, solar, all the green stuff, the green energy stuff that they have over there, all the fossil fuels that they're using is mostly coming from Russia. Well, what they're trying to do is they're trying to make sure that, okay, well, let's get that Middle Eastern oil, and the best way to do that is get a pipeline from Qatar to Turkey, and since Turkey is a NATO ally, that helps out Turkey as well, which there's a whole thing to go into about Turkey. Turkey, they're a NATO ally, but they're also their leader is, I mean, if he's not a dictator, he definitely wants to be one. it's pretty bad. So this whole thing is meant to make it easier for our European allies to get oil and natural gas without having to go through Russia. So there's all of that going on. There's the interests. And again, that helps us in the US because it does diminish Russia a bit. Even though Russia is not a big a threat to us as China is, we know China owns Joe Biden, so that's not you don't even have to go there. But what we need to realize is that if we do, the bottom line of this, if we go to war in Syria with boots on the ground, which, here's the thing, we were talking about doing that back when we invaded Iraq. We were done. We had conquered Iraq in, 2 weeks? Maybe less? And there was talk of, why don't we just go to Syria now? Why don't we just take care of that right then and there? There was talk at that time. Why don't we just go in then? We were already there. We had 250,000 troops. Syria's a pretty small country. The border's really porous between Iraq and Syria. Why not just go there? It's probably that would probably be a big help to Israel as well. So there was talk back then. So it's not like this hasn't been on the table for 20 years. But this is, the bottom line is, if we go to war in Syria, this is the definition of a war for oil. 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago, everybody was saying Iraq was a war for oil. Well, gas prices skyrocketed to almost $5 a gallon after that war for oil. So that was bullshit. This time it legitimately is, because there is a legit pipeline planned to go straight through Syria. And I guarantee that thing gets done in months. If we invade Syria, that's going to just go right through and make it happen. So I don't know what Joe Biden's really doing. Honestly, I don't think he knows what's really going on. I mean, he's given some speeches in the meantime that say he's actually stopped in the middle and go, what am I doing here? I mean, this guy has the nuclear codes and he's asking in the middle of the speech, what am I doing here? So go look it up. It has happened. So I'm a little bit concerned. And here's the thing is, at least a war for oil would make sense. Why is he launching strikes right now in Syria? Because if he's trying to start a war, that would be a logical thing to do. I'm not saying it's a good thing to do. I really hope we can stay out of another war in the Middle East. We've had enough wars for 20 years. I supported both of our forever wars that we've had over the last 20 years. I supported them when they happened. I supported them for the first 10 years after they started, and I'm over them now. It's like, okay, it's been 20 years. These countries, now it's time to let them go completely. They need to figure it out.